Clifford Harrington was the chairman of the National Socialist Movement before they tried to go mainstream, when they still wore Nazi uniforms. As we approached the state capitol, he started to lead a chant.
No niggers! No Jews! The Mexicans must go too!
Younger members of the leadership quickly silenced him and chose a theme better suited to a mainstream audience.
USA! 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 USA!
Hello and welcome back. Now we're examining the opportunity white supremacists in the US are finding in the current turmoil of issues such as the economy and immigration, all under the country's first black president. Discussing how such groups are using mainstream issues to strengthen their position, I have Chip Burley, who's with Political Research Associates. He's with us via broadband in Boston. Mr. Burley has spent more than 25 years investigating far-right hate groups. Joining us from Kansas City is Leonard Zeskind, author of Blood and Politics, The History of the White Nationalist Movement. And in New York, Rick Rowley, the producer of the independent documentary White Power USA, which you just saw there. Actually, Leonard Zeskind, listening to what was being said there about Clifford Harrington, makes me address an email that we got from a viewer in Michigan in the USA. Linda Taylor wrote in saying, freedom of speech is the law of the land in the US. You can say anything you want, but if you hurt someone because of it, you also get charged with hate crime. So where is that balance struck in the USA nowadays between freedom of speech and the inciting of hatred?
Well, I think the obligation of people who consider themselves small d Democrats, who think of themselves as anti-racist, is to use their own First Amendment rights to speak out in opposition to the harmful rhetoric of groups like the National Socialist Movement. It does not really further our societal goals to shut them down completely and say they can't talk. It is much more important that we have our say, that we describe what we see as happening, and that we put forward a more democratic, open-minded point of view.
We've got Oliver on the line from Virginia. Oliver, thanks for being with us. What's your question, please?
Thanks, Red. I was wondering if the number of the European Americans become less and the number of minorities and immigrants become much higher, is this considered to be a recipe for a civil war in the next 10 years or 15 years coming up? And the same thing happened in England between the white British and the Southeast Asian from the countries like India and Pakistan and from Arab countries. Is this the same thing? Could it happen?
Chip Burley, what Oliver brings up there is the issue of the sort of critical mass of immigrants coming in, changing the country in such a way that perhaps it could lead to a civil war. I don't know if America makes an easy comparison with Britain, but what's your view?
Well, I think this is why Leonard Zeskind's book is so important, because it explains how race hate groups actually organize people into a more confrontational mode, and how it moves from the margins to the mainstream, an idea that he pioneered. So I think the story here is, if white people step up and confront societal bigotry and their own history of bigotry, it'll make a difference. If we pretend that this battle isn't going on, things will get pretty ugly.
Let me get another excerpt from White Power USA here to you. This is one where we look at the members of the Tea Party movement, demonstrators expressing their views.
Coming to a clinic near you.
And I think the guy's a racist. I mean, he's talking about how he's going to bring this country together. If he gets us any more together, we're going to kill each other.
What's the difference between the Cleveland Zoo and the White House? The zoo has an African lion, and the White House has a lion African.
But do you think Obama is a real American?
No, I do not.
Now, Rick Rowley, at the beginning there, the gentleman said we're taking our nation back. You know, we're taking our country back. It seems to be a common chant between the Tea Party movement demonstrators and white supremacists. What exactly are they saying when they want to take their nation back?
Well, yeah, clearly that's a point where the thinly veiled racial narratives that animate the far right of the white nationalist movements are seeping into a more mainstream moment. I mean, as Chip Burley has pointed out, I mean, he's talked about this extensively, I mean, our country, America, is a white Christian nation. And that nation is contaminated and made less American by the influx of immigrants, according to this white nationalist ideology. And so to take our nation back from them is to, especially when you're speaking to an audience of 75,000 almost entirely white people in front of the Capitol, newly occupied by America's first black president, I mean, the racial message there is pretty close to the surface.
We have on the line from the Netherlands, Ibrahim. Thanks for your patience, Ibrahim. What would you like to ask or add?
I was just wondering because I'm not a psychologist, if any of those three men on your screen right now have any psychological ideology to read in the minds of those who are demonstrating, because it's like, for me, I really don't know. They are fighting or trying to demonstrate about white supremacy in America, because it's like the impossible. The world today we are, or the America today we are. It is an impossible battle.
Okay. Let me actually, Rick Rowley, again, when making this documentary, did there seem to be a sense of people losing a grip on reality and what they were aiming for, what they're going for in this idea of white supremacy?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, at the core of the ideology of many of these people on the far right is an apocalyptic, millenarian vision of the future. I mean, people said to us on camera, "I believe in a racial holy war that's going on in America right now." I mean, that was a belief that was held in common by many people on the extreme right, articulated by people on the extreme right, and said in sort of more shielded ways by people in the center. Yeah, I mean, there's a deep feelings of insecurity about the changing country, about the economy, and about their position in it, and that is definitely feeds into this kind of violence.
Let me get a question in here to Leonard Zeskid and ask, you know, in the post 9/11 culture of fear and the sort of stereotyping of, in this case, particularly in Muslim groups, how has that changed, or at least how has that been added to the targets that the white supremacists have? Because, you know, the Muslim culture hasn't really been discussed much from what I've seen in the general debate with the white supremacists, but presumably it's part of that group of people that are really outsiders.
Well, actually, there was a debate in the white nationalist movement after the 9/11 events as to whether or not they would target people of the Islamic faith, whether or not they would target them as foreigners and as immigrants, or whether or not they would go after the Jews and blame Israel. There was a debate. It happened in several meetings, and they decided that some of the groups decided that they would target Muslim people, and some decided that they still thought, as they did before, that since the Jews ran the world, they were the targets. And in both cases, of course, the assessment of who runs what is wrong. But there was a discussion, and we're seeing some of it now.
Well, gentlemen, we have again, you know, so much more we could discuss on this topic. Thank you so much for taking part and giving us your perspectives on this. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you, Riz.
Thank you for being with us and sending in those questions. Now, of course, you can catch a full broadcast of White Power USA, which looks at white supremacist groups and their influence on mainstream American politics, on Al Jazeera's People and Power this Thursday at 0130, 1400 and 1930 GMT. And the program airs through the weekend until Monday. Now, you can be sure to check those times, double check those times at aljazeera.net/English, just to make sure what time it's on in your area. And remember, you can follow our program on Twitter. We'll keep you notified on upcoming shows, and you can send us questions and comments to pose to our guests. On the next show, is it airport apartheid? The US says its new security measures are motivated purely by safety concerns, but some worry that religious discrimination is becoming a key factor. Make sure to tune in for that, but from me and the team, we'll see you next time.